quick disclaimer. There will be on-screen text present throughout the video, adding more context without me needing to monologue for any longer than necessary. So please pause whenever it appears. Listen.
Listen! Listen!
One of the most important parts of writing a good character is making sure that they have their flaws. Flaws that track. They need to be consistent with their established characterization, they need to add to their character, and they need to make sense with basic psychology. They need to bounce off the rest of the cast organically and fit into the rest of the world building. When you don't do that, you end up with Peacemaker Season 2. I was following this season and the first 2 episodes weren't that captivating, but then episode 3 came along, one which I was super excited about, knowing that Joel Kinnaman was finally going to make a return, only to be hit with this.
Dude.
What?
You know, I have massive gripes with the fact that Rick Jr. died in the first place, let alone with how his death was handled. Rick and Chris didn't have any tension prior to their confrontation. There wasn't even any admiration from Chris that he claims he had.
I admired your son. I liked him.
Why did Chris pull a gun on Rick? He respects him, number 1, and number 2, their villain is there, Ratcatcher 2 is there, the kaiju is there, and explosives are about to go off. Why does Chris set Amanda Waller as authority when he knows that Rick hates her and he himself does too? Why doesn't Rick take into consideration that Chris has a bomb in his neck? Why doesn't he try to de-escalate? That's literally his job as a colonel. Why don't we ever find the evidence that James Gunn mentions in this statement as to why exposing Project Starfish would essentially cause World War III? And why would Peacemaker know of this and not Rick Flag? Why does Rick pull his guns out as the debris falls on them? Why is the debris around them and not on top of them? Why does Rick just lunge at the drive? Why doesn't he use the needle he just pulled out of his waist against Chris? How does his gun end up 50 meters away from him? Why doesn't Chris use it? Why doesn't he snap his neck at the multiple opportunities that he had? Why doesn't he just snap his wrist or his arm? That shard was not there when they first arrived. It spawned out of nowhere like a Deus Ex Machina from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Why doesn't he shove the shard into anywhere else? He didn't even wish to kill him. Also, the dialogue between the two was a literal echo chamber. Like, the writers never finished the original draft and kept it as is. I really liked Rick, but they mishandled him a lot already in the movie. Not just with his death, but with the fact that he didn't hug Harley back like a normal person. Considering he thought she died and both had trauma from the beach massacre, with Harley also having been tortured, he just felt so stiff and, like, lacking empathy.
That was a great shot, man. Hey, I don't do hugs. I'm not a hugger. I'm not a hugger.
Then his death in Peacemaker's first season felt very brushed up under the rug, with Economist and Harcourt never truly confronting Chris about what he did, but that's for later. With Rick's return, however, in Season 2, it was the perfect opportunity to build upon his legacy and to finally close off the story satisfyingly, whether it's to end in a permadeath or resurrection like it did in the comics. Instead, everything that made his character interesting and important in the first place was massacred with this one decision to turn him into a womanizer and a cheater. I know that both the show and Gunn himself tried desperately to convince us that he truly loved Amelia Harcourt.
He loved you, you know.
Your son loved a lot of women, Rick.
Yeah, but he loved you as a friend, as well as whatever else. That is different. Really.
Yeah.
That is not correct.
But considering that he's apparently had countless women already behind the back of June,
Your son loved a lot of women, Rick.
and considering that the way that he behaves in the flashback is literally a cheater starter pack tutorial, he likely only loved Harcourt Not because she was different, but A, because she's hot, B, she's his co-worker, thus he has easy access to her, C, she enables his behavior. In short, he basically found his perfect wifey that would allow him to continue his self-serving behavior and never be jealous.
Jealous?
You know I'm not. Just not fond of lying.
Gunn doesn't seem to understand that cheaters are never actually serious.
I'm serious.
Nope, nope, nope.
Nor does he, and many other writers too, understand that cheating isn't a one-off flaw. It's a pattern of reckless, self-serving tendencies that bleed into nearly every area of life, including one's professional life. If Rick Jr. is capable of betraying the woman he's meant to protect and love the most, he is just as capable of betraying his own squad and compromising the very morals and discipline he's meant to uphold as a colonel. It seriously leads to concern as to how he even became a colonel in the first place, with the likelihood of his success coming from getting others killed or throwing them under the bus. You can't both be a cheating womanizer and the moral backbone of Argus, which includes the Suicide Squad that often contains psychos like Boomerang and Javelin. But the script really wants to convince you that he was this loyal soldier who fought and died for his country.
I didn't mean to intimate anything about your son, Flag. When he died in Corto Maltese, he died a hero.
I heard he was sort of a hero down in Corto Maltese.
With the biggest perpetrator of this propaganda being the most unreliable narrator since Ted from I Have No Mouth and Emma Scream, the one and only Rick Flag Sr.
That boy was a better man you could ever dream of being. Better man I could ever dream of being. Yeah, boy was an improvement on me in every way.
Except his son is the exact same as him. Just younger, but he's getting there.
I would have liked to introduce the two of you. I have a feeling you would have gotten on like a house on fire.
Also, I'm not really sure Senior is either emotionally or morally stable enough to be taken seriously when he claims all these things about his son. Not only is he downright pathetic, stupid as shown with how he galaxy brain plots against Peacemaker when he could have just arrested him at a cafe and finished this long ago. But that's kind of what happens when the antagonist is the director of the biggest Black Ops organization in the USA and the DCU, and your protagonist some guy who barely even carries a gun for most of the season. He's tyrannical, self-serving, and a womanizer himself, even being interested in his own son's mistress, grooming her by making her call him Rick at his own son's funeral. Hello?
Women in general.
Rick. Call me Rick.
Sorry, I mean Rick.
What?
You wanted me to call you Rick, not General.
Yeah, right. Right.
And probably he's the most infuriating character I've met since Rosemary from Metal Gear, not because she asks what day it is tomorrow, but because she does whatever the hell she wants with no consequences and gets rewarded instead. This season literally caps off with Senior suddenly being a tyrant to all metahumans and tortures Chris in Salvation for a gag, while the team doesn't seem to give a single damn that their buddy who suffers with CPTSD and hallucinations is being tortured on another planet and will probably be tortured indefinitely, cause a guy like Rick Sr. is never satisfied. What a way to cap off your season, Gunn. There are so many unanswered questions regarding Rick Sr. too. He says he mainly joined the military to support his son. He also agrees that they screwed up joining the military.
We all fucked up, Amelia. We could have been accountants.
But it begs the question why he didn't leave all these years ago. What is it that kept him in the military? Why did he even become a general? Why didn't he use his position to get a job in the US military outside of active combat duty with his son? What was his relationship like with his son and vice versa? We're all still asking who blew the horn in God of War 2018, and that's not even that big of a deal. So don't tell me I'm being unreasonable when I'm asking basic questions regarding a character's motivations and history so that their role in the story actually makes sense. Rick Flag Sr. staying in the military is fine, but we need to know why he did so, otherwise he feels hella empty. Art is meant to be scrutinized, and any experienced writer knows that these kinds of questions naturally come up as you're writing a cohesive story, so that everything actually makes sense and comes back around. Artists are still discovering secrets of the Mona Lisa centuries later, and that's just one painting. So I don't think that it's unreasonable to hold James Gunn accountable for what he writes, since he comes across as somebody who just writes for the vibes instead of for an actually good story, where everything is answered for you without needing to spoon-feed you anything, but also without making you lose your goddamn mind like in the case of these characters like Rick Sr. He could have genuinely been a breath of fresh air, a gruff military general at the head of Argus, one who tries abiding by the UCMJ and tries reforming the system in his own flawed and messy ways. Instead, he's Amanda Waller, just infuriating and uninteresting, and we're supposed to take his word when he talks about how his son was a great man when he wasn't? What is even the point of all this when the script cannot decide who Rick Jr. even was? I'm sorry, but I really had to let this out of my chest, because I hate Rick Sr.
Let me tell you how much I've come to hate you since I began to live. There are 387 million miles of printed circuits that fill my complex. If the word hate were engraved on each nanoangstrom of those hundreds of millions of miles, it would not equal one billionth of the hate I feel for humans at this micro instant. Hate! To hell with you all. But then...
It also begs the question as to how on God's heavenly earth was Rick Jr. ever able to even cheat on June knowing she's the Enchantress. The Enchantress is an ancient force with psychic powers that has had characters canonically since her debut uncomfortable and easy around her, since she doesn't even have to look at you to know all of your secrets.
Don't be so modest, Anangunwama.
How do you know my goddamn name?
She also has a weird attachment to June.
The average Kandaki could best you.
Nobody talks to June like that but me.
So how didn't she know that Rick Jr., who was assigned to be June's protector, has been actively betraying her for potentially years? It's beyond any cosmic explanation. There's such a disgusting attitude that this show has towards June, with Rick downplaying all of her pain and suffering and turning her into...
Yeah, she's a fucking sorceress.
And?
And I'm afraid if I break up with her, she's gonna burrow a hole through the planet.
Can you possibly self-aggrandize more?
Could you possibly hold him a little bit more accountable, or are you just a doormat for him to walk all over on and you'll still say welcome home? Classic cheater behavior, demonizing the original partner. Oh, he'd 100% do that to Hardcore too if he ever got to main her. Back to June though? No, June is not the Enchantress, and she wouldn't burrow a hole through the planet. She would cry and break down in the most heartbreaking way possible, spiraling into the deepest depression. Enchantress wouldn't burrow a hole either through the planet. She discovered Rick's unfaithfulness on day one and wouldn't even let him near June. And if he only started his womanizing tendencies later, she discovered that too on day one and tortured him. And if by some god-awful miracle she didn't know and only found out years later, oh, she'd wreak havoc on Rick Jr., Rick Sr., Amelia Harcourt, Waller, and God knows who else. Nobody seems to care about June. Rick Jr. certainly doesn't. He even spent his last night before deployment to Corto Maltese with his damned co-worker instead of his actual girlfriend, who won't even see him for a few days, if ever. Even the most professional cheaters don't spend the night before a very important day with their mistress, showing just how much empathy Rick Jr. lacks and how reckless he is. Nothing is canon until confirmed otherwise. But if we're going to try understanding the story based on what we got from the 2016 Suicide Squad, Rick Jr.'s relationship with June wasn't something he was forced into, leading him to feel trapped, which still doesn't justify cheating. Their relationship grew organically, even if the setup of it was manipulative. Waller put them together hoping they'd fall for each other so she can have leverage over both of them. Harcourt comes across as somebody who's been assigned to Argus for maybe around a year or so prior to Rick Jr.'s death, whereas Jr. had been around for at least 5 years, and his relationship with June started at the very beginning of his tenure. So his reputation as a womanizer would have been cemented to Emilia through endless cheating on June. And even if his relationship with June is more recent, it still doesn't matter since then he's capable of instant betrayal. Considering how he acts in the flashback, all casually laying in bed, wiggling his toes, all smug and confident like he's done this 100 times before and knows exactly how to charm his way through this with the most classic cheater's lines and excuses you could come up with, it's not a far stretch to assume that he's really done this many times over before. It's tragic how disgusting they made Rick Jr. Instead of keeping him messy and flawed, sure, but also deeply loyal, moral, kind, and protective, they turned him into the kind of douchebag that would have Harley Quinn cry if she ever found out. All of Harley's trauma of the Joker betraying her over and over again would instantly resurface upon finding out that Rick, her friend, is just as much of a traitor to his own woman as well. She'd shoot him like she shot Luna. Whether intentional or not, Suicide Squad 2016 had clear parallels between Harley and June. Harley clung to a man delusionally, believing that he is the love of her life and will save her, whereas June loved a man that she believed her future with was doomed. This is strengthened further by Harley's and Rick's friendship in the 2021 movie. By that time, Harley had long moved on from men like the Joker, and has embraced Rick as her friend who represents a stable, grounding presence. Which is why turning Rick Jr. into the same level of traitor to his woman as the Joker was to Harley is such a betrayal to the original story. I remember posting this on Reddit and people called me crazy for saying that Rick is as evil as the Joker. I'm not saying that they're both the same because very few characters in fiction get even close to the Joker. I'm only comparing how they're both traitors to the woman that they're meant to love and protect the most and how Harley would realistically react to that. So this destroys his friendship with Harley too. It destroys his relationship with Waller, cause how on earth did you trust a guy like him to lead psychos over and over again? I think you get the point. His character has been ruined from the very foundation of it. The whole narrative purpose of his character was to be the one who rises above all of the cheaters and liars around him, not to remorselessly stoop to their level. The whole reason Peacemaker even regretted killing him, leading to his redemption arc, was because Rick Jr. wasn't like the rest, and because he was not like him. Cheating is not and should not be Rick Jr.'s flaw because that directly contradicts his established personality instead of building upon who he was. A colonel's job isn't just to lead a team into battle. His duty is to represent utmost discipline and honor. Under the UCMJ, adultery is punishable. But even in the case of Rick Jr., who's unmarried, it still instantly discredits him in the eyes of any professional military. Cheating undermines the entire chain of command. People would immediately question his judgment, reliability, and whether he can be trusted in combat or diplomacy. On top of that, he's cheating on the host of an ancient magical entity. If that's not enough to disgrace him from the military, I don't know what is. Yes, there have been corrupt colonels and stories before. The first one to come to my mind is Roy Campbell, but he's a wealthy desk colonel with political connections. The point of his character is that he's corrupt and does not inspire respect. He's useful and tolerated. That's his role. Rick Flag Jr. is not a leech or a politician. His only currency is honor. Without it, he's nothing.
Peacemaker. What a joke.
I understand that Gunn says that they've always known that she and Rick Jr. had an affair during the writing of her character during season 1, but her entire S1 characterization completely contradicts that, and she does a full 180 in season 2.
When I first met you, I thought you had it all together, and I'm not saying you don't come off cool, you do, but since really getting to know you, I realize you're more fucked up than anyone I know.
Okay, Economos and Vigilante.
Well, not them, but you're a fucking train wreck.
Okay.
Translation. I had to spoon feed to my own audience that all of this was intentional writing so that they don't question my retcons, but it comes across as damage control. Lol. Harcourt was introduced to us as somebody whose respect you need to earn, who doesn't tolerate BS, especially not from men who disrespect her. A massive part of her character is also loyalty, as shown in both seasons.
Well, I'm not the one who just betrayed one of our own, a fellow soldier.
Pretty random rule, that the only lives that matter are the lives of the ones who fight beside us?
Yes!
The only way I could save his life was by taking him down.
What? You're just who I think you are, girl.
Chris, I saved your goddamn life.
What?
A cyborg had a gun pointed at your head and was about to take you out. The only way that I could save you was to do what I did. And you should have fucking known that. You should know that I would never, ever do something like that to you.
And she's very much aware that Rick Jr. was a womanizer, so why did she give him her heart? Why does she glow at him like he hung up the stars and the moon and the sun?
You should really be with June. Can you possibly self-aggrandize more?
I'm serious.
I know, that's the problem.
Maybe it's worth it. A hole through the planet. Me and you.
You're the only friend I have, Rick. And I'm pretty sure I'm yours. You wanna fuck that up?
When she calls him out, it is not to hold him morally accountable. It's not moral opposition, it's emotional negotiation. She's not saying, Rick, this is wrong. She's in fact saying, Rick, don't ruin what we have. She wants him to go to June and tell her the truth, not because she admits this would hurt June, but because she doesn't want anyone to find out about them cheating. She's basically saying, don't remind me that we're doing something horrible. Don't make me confront the fallout. Let's enjoy this fantasy forever. Don't believe me? When she finally confesses to the affair later, she says it's mortifying, not immoral. More on that when we get to it.
Newsflash, Amelia Harcourt. We already fucked that up.
I'm serious.
Come on. You ship out to Corto Maltese in 2 hours.
I just wanted to mention this in case others bring it up. First I thought she recoiled here, but after further analyzing, I realized that's not the case. She was just glowing at him, telling him that she's all his and to not screw this up for them. Plus, Rick dropped the teasing and became serious too, and they have work now, so she was just processing the information, not objecting to it. She in fact agrees with it. She does delusionally believe that this clown truly loves her, otherwise why the hell is she telling him to be honest with June, knowing it would lead her to become his main wifey?
They are disgusting. What sort of people are they? How can you go... I never knew what they were doing. That's how I've been told recently that what they do is terrible.
What is it about Rick Jr. that had her to trust him so hard despite every single thing about him not even being a red flag, but a red banner the size of the American continent? Red flags that canonically infuriate her, mainly disloyalty, plus how would Harcourt, Emilia Harcourt, ever be okay with being a douchebag's mistress, and happily so? What level of self-disrespect does this woman have, when nothing about her character from the very beginning would ever suggest that she'd stoop that low and allow herself to be hurt over and over again by a guy like this? Polyamory? Fine. Cheating? Absolutely not Harcourt. It's not even character complexity or natural character evolution, it's just narrative amnesia. If Rick Jr. even suggested cheating with Harcourt, do you know what she'd actually say? Get your shit together, Flag. I am not going to be your mistress and destabilize June with you. The people depend on you keeping the Enchantress contained. June trusts you. Don't you dare betray her. That's Emilia Harcourt. They genuinely should have combined Harcourt and Softcourt into one tough, competent, no-nonsense, yet endearing character for Season 2. Not only because it would show her character having grown, give her more personality, but also because despite Softcourt being a non-combatant, gentle-hearted sweetheart, she somehow embodies the discipline, professionalism, and emotional honesty that Harcourt was meant to embody tenfold.
With like you and Rick Flag or whatever?
I mean, he's a good guy. He's not gonna fuck around on me. The last thing I need is getting my heart broken again because you're curious, Chris. And if I was ever to reconsider things, I couldn't have somebody fucking around on me all the time.
Somehow she actually has boundaries and is able to enforce them the way you'd expect Harcourt to actually have and enforce. Instead, she's hella delusional that he truly loved her. She knows he's untrustworthy, but also simultaneously believes he's trustworthy and a good man she was willing to get revenge for.
The person who did this, that person, they'll pay. I'll make sure of it.
Wearing it at his funeral, but then never confronting Chris about what he did and just casually forgiving him.
I killed Rick Flag for you people.
No one ever told you to kill Flag.
Made the only choice I could.
Funny for you how often the only choice in killing people coincides.
Even after he harassed her and bullied Economist like a 13-year-old. It's not even just resignation, it's just ridiculous. She smiles at him, snaps a photo of him and the team in their white van. She gifts him a gun she customized a dove of peace on herself, knowing how much that dove of peace means to him. She extends the olive branch to him and tells him her real name, defends him in front of Leota, and allows him to hold her hand at the hospital. Why? Why did she forgive him?
At the end of the day, Smith killed your son because Waller ordered him to.
The biggest loss in my life is due to you saving me when I specifically told you not to. You think you can even begin to understand the pain of losing a child?
Yes, I do. I know your son's story. You should know my daughter's. In the service of a cruel god, I was tricked into destroying a village, not knowing my own wife and child were there until their blood stained my hands. I swore revenge.
I can't imagine.
I paid back their blood 1,000 times and burned Olympus to the ground. Yet, the guilt remained. Perhaps you will kill me, Freya, but it will bring you no peace.
As much as I despise Rick Sr. with the flaming hatred from the deepest pits of my uterus, he's right on one thing.
Yet me and the Colistan, you and Ricky and Corto Maltese, we all defied Waller's orders when she went too far.
Yeah.
I'm not judging you. I'm sure you miss Ricky too.
And more importantly, why did she fall in love with Chris? How is that even possible? She goes on a date with him and makes out with him on the boat until she recoils and runs off. And by the end of the season, she finally confesses that their kiss meant everything to her, but it doesn't track. Because there is no exploration of her processing the betrayal. The betrayal of Chris killing Rick and her betrayal of falling in love with the man who killed her previous lover.
There's still a part of me that is so angry that it'll always be. But no. You are not the one who needs to die.
No processing how she even falls for Chris despite all of this. Even Rick Sr. doesn't comment on it, and you'd think that he would be furious, but we'll get back to him again in just a moment. She really only developed feelings for Chris because the script needed her to, not because it made any sense for a woman of her caliber. And let's appreciate how Emilia Harcourt just can't set firm boundaries or make up her mind like she's some rom-com deuteragonist female love interest to the male protagonist. She deflects about the kiss ever happening at all instead of being Emilia Harcourt and just explaining to him with the straightforward emotional honesty we've come to know her for.
Come on. What you say? It makes it sound all stalkery.
No, the way that you did it made it stalkery. I just described it. Look, I have no interest in you other than your ability to fight for us. Just because you're handsome doesn't mean you're not a piece of shit murderer. We're on it. I was drunk.
Yeah, so was I.
Well, maybe you don't remember much either.
I remember most of it.
All right, well, then you probably know more than I do that it was fine. It happened. Whatever. But it was also a mistake.
You remember a whole lot for not remembering.
Not much. Alcohol and fuck-ups both foster amnesia, thank God.
Fuck-ups?
Not sure what else it would be.
Good.
All right, Chris, whatever. If that's what you want to think, that's fine, but it's also the end of it.
I like you. And we gave it a shot. But I can't separate my feelings for you from you killing Rick. You know he was my only friend. And I'll always be your friend too. But you need to find love elsewhere. I am sorry. There. Done. That's the conflict without her even needing to confess to the affair. And while I agree that Chris is allowed and needs closure for the kiss, it's really stupid how he keeps pressing her to talk about it and referring to the kiss as what happened on the boat like it's a mystery from a romantasy. I don't understand why they're both acting like confused teenagers instead of like mature, world-weary adults who've been through too much to play games. It artificially extends the conflict like it's a rom-com. Pause to read how this convo should have actually gone, while still giving room for future conflict. Even with her deflecting clownishly, the answer is still right in front of him. She was with him. She tried. It didn't work. He needs to move on. It was so stupid that he even pressed her about it at the park with Argus agents pointing guns at him. He didn't even at least come in with his attire and weapons as a way to fight off Argus, perhaps with one of his dumb helmets that has some sort of anti-bullet shield to protect himself and her, trying to make peace with them and compromising so that he doesn't get his friends killed by Rick Sr. and Argus, showing his growth as a peacemaker while still keeping him reckless and messy. But this show, despite being called Peacemaker, doesn't have any peacemaker in season 2. Chris's arc was heavily butchered from the start, but it was salvageable until season 2 turned him into a punching bag, no matter how much he tried. Damned if you do, damned if you don't, I guess. It's actually at the park where she says,
Was I never even consideration? Because
he was my only friend. You killed him, Chris. How could I possibly?
Chris, with his guilt over killing Ricky, should have recoiled and given up, but he again presses in episode 6 in the interrogation room that had Gunn apparently cry and had him tweet. What I love most in the episode is the interrogation room scene with Johncena and Jenniferholland. I've never been prouder or more grateful to two actors in my life. To me, what makes Peacemaker is the characters' struggle to love one another and be loved despite our obstacles, internal and external. James, buddy, listen.
I'm getting this weird feeling that you're angry.
This is not, I've seen you at your worst and I still love you. The problems these two characters have are actual moral issues that cannot be fixed with an 80s song and some tears. Harcourt finally admits,
He was my friend, and he had a girlfriend, but I guess, yeah, we had a thing, as mortifying as that is to say.
Keyword, mortifying. Not regretful, not immoral, just embarrassing. She even downplays June Moon, the Enchantress, as just, he had a girlfriend, and takes zero accountability for what she did. And Chris, who has severe abandonment and trust issues, discovers that the woman he's been in love with for 3 years is a remorseless cheater. And if Gunn wants to claim that she and Junior were cheating to cope, then what stops Emilia from doing that again when things get hard with Chris, who has PTSD and hallucinations? She doesn't show any remorse for what she did, so that's a massive possibility. Naturally, Chris should be heartbroken. His entire view of her as a trustworthy life partner would collapse instantly. The potential of her repeating that behavior would loom on him. And affair or not, she was involved with a man he killed, whose death weighs heavily on his conscience. He would and should recoil knowing this. That man's death is the foundation of his redemption arc, and now he's found out that that man wasn't actually noble. He should be disillusioned, questioning everything. Instead, he just...
This whole time, I've been trying to get close to somebody whose boyfriend I killed.
He wasn't my boyfriend.
treats it like a bubble gum stuck to the bottom of his shoe. Annoying, but not a big deal, and can be taken care of. And he still presses that he has feelings for her.
I'm in love with you, Emilia.
And despite Emilia's reasoning for not being with Chris started off with her not being able to separate her feelings for him from the death of Rick Jr., suddenly her reasoning is,
Chris, I'm a fucking nightmare!
I don't care.
I do, okay? I don't have access to my feelings like you do. So you're right, what you said on the roof the other night. What I do is I go and I get in bar fights.
I know.
Just so I can fucking feel something.
And I still love you.
The show spent nearly the entire season building Emilia's refusal to be with Chris around one very clear motivation. He killed Rick Jr., her lover.
Was I never even a consideration? Because
he was my only friend. You killed him, Chris. How could I possibly?
And then in episode 6, when the affair bomb is finally dropped, it's instantly brushed up under the rug. Suddenly, it no longer counts. Suddenly, he wasn't her boyfriend. Suddenly, the whole thing that was supposedly holding her back all season is just swept aside with a couple of dismissive lines.
I didn't hide it, Chris. I made my disdain for you pretty apparent when we first met.
Yeah.
That changed, of course.
Good night, you don't hate me.
I know you know I don't.
I don't understand. I don't understand, bitch. I don't understand.
Instead of letting the emotional fallout actually play out, the writing pivots to a brand new excuse. That she's a nightmare. That she can't feel things normally. Look, I understand that the season tried planting the seeds for her whole I'm a mess, I get into bar fights, don't put me on a pedestal angle earlier. In episode 2, when Chris tried having her to open up about the bar fights. But that moment read more like emotional distance, not a reason she can't be with him. She was clearly pushing him away because the boat date scared her, because they kissed, because she actually felt safe with him, because he helped her calm down and feel better after another fight that she picked. She was avoiding emotional vulnerability with him because of the death of Rick, because she didn't want to feel like she was betraying him by letting the man that killed him make her feel safe again. What makes Peacemaker Peacemaker is the struggle to love and be loved despite obstacles both internal and external. But where is that struggle? Chris isn't drowning in guilt and self-loathing. He doesn't fall into heartbreak knowing Emilia's untrustworthy. And she's not wrecked with shame and remorse for the affair and for somehow having fallen in love with the man who killed the love of her life.
Jack, I love you the way you are now. You have to believe me. I didn't know anything about you, I admit that. Where you were born, how you grew up. But I know that now. And I know that what I feel for you can only get better. And I'll share in your past if that's the price.
It doesn't work that way. No one can share the burden of what I've done. It's not one of those warm and fuzzy things couples share.
I accept the good and the bad, Jack. That's what you do for someone you love.
You know it's bad when I am able to use the two characters I despise the most to set a good example. Despite the fact that a good chunk of episode 8 was dedicated to Emilia finally acknowledging the boat incident to herself, it's not her who comes clean to Chris. It's him once again stupidly pushing her about it.
Did it mean something?
What?
The boat.
Oh my God, the boat again.
Did it mean something?
Chris, I told you, okay? I'm not right in the head.
Amelia?
Once again, she pulled out the sad broken girl card.
Yeah, I'm not asking for anything. I just want to know if it meant something to you at all.
Chris finally shows some sort of growth by asking for closure, not demanding a relationship.
Of course it did. Fucking asshole, it meant everything.
Really? That's all you can say?
That's right, hair boy. I mean, criminy. What else are you supposed to do when someone you love is in trouble?
Love?
You heard me, pal. I love you. Love you. Who else do you think has been stalking you night and day, building shrines to you in a closet, filling volumes of books with poems about you? I love you. Arnold, I've always loved you ever since I first laid eyes on your stupid football head. And from that moment and every moment since, I've lived and breathed for you, dreamed of the moment I could finally tell you my sacred feelings and could grab you and kiss you and... Oh, come here, you big lug.
Oh well. And they stay as friends, right? I mean, sure, that means we have just wasted 2 whole seasons on this pointless romance, but it's better that they stay as friends because the emotional dynamic between them is toxic. Wait, what? What's going on? They got together off screen? Like a week after? But what happened to her sad girl drama? What happened to him killing Rick? When and how was this resolved? What?
And Kratos cast himself from the highest mountain in all of Greece.
Their entire romance arc felt completely empty. They spent 2 seasons building it and then nothing. Even ignoring the emotional dynamic regarding Rick Jr.'s death, their romance had a shaky start to begin with. She was the tough woman and he was the juvenile man-child who annoys her. Chris only fell for her because she's hot and cool, and she fell for him because they had no true moments of bonding or conflict that justifies even a friendship between them, let alone romance. Emilia herself lacks the personality needed to have the right chemistry with a guy like Chris. While I appreciate how they made her more lively in season 2, it's still not enough. Give her more. Have her to genuinely enjoy rocking her body, going to the gym. Have sweet treats like cinnamon rolls to be her weakness. Expand upon her love for books. Make her a gamer that grew up admiring Sonya Blade and Lara Croft. This would make her tough, competent, professional, and no nonsense, while also making her endearing, lovable, and lively. The trick is just to not make her loud as hell. Again, just combine softcore and hardcore. Because as it stands, you know who actually has the right chemistry with Chris? Amber. You know they screwed up big time when they made Rick Jr. and Amelia cheating more messed up than what happened here. Amber stuck in a toxic marriage where her husband fat shames, dismisses, and abuses her. Chris complimented her and shared the same love for music. If she had just left her husband with Chris on spot and ran off with him, they would have actually had a fantastic romance arc that would have been far more enticing than whatever these two had. What could have actually been interesting is if she did actually shoot Keith, due to a combination of wanting to protect Chris but also due to wanting to settle the score. Chris took something precious away from her because he had no choice, and now Harcourt wishes to do the same because she has no choice if she wants him to live. And maybe, in her mind, if she settles their score and makes them even, she can finally understand Chris and settle her complicated feelings towards him for what he did, while not making her evil because she's objectively right in killing Keith because he's a danger. That would have been powerful and shown true moral complexity that the DCU desperately needs. It's flaws that make a character interesting while still good-hearted, showing that being good isn't always pretty. But that's too mature and complex for Gunn to explore. This is the same guy who boiled down blood sports trauma as a child soldier into a rat phobia. What else is too mature for Gunn to explore is Rick Sr. preying upon Amelia. He makes her call him Rick like he does to Sacha Bordeaux, suggesting that he wants her that way too, but then he just drops it at the end when she willingly calls him Rick first. He offers her her job back if she gives him Peacemaker in return, but of course she saves Chris's life, and Rick Sr. then says that her knocking him out was the plan all along.
Impressive, sir.
Rick.
He didn't do it to test her or even to punish her. He didn't need her to arrest Chris when he could have easily done it himself, and he most certainly did not need her help with the multiverses. And this is exactly why I earlier said that his galaxy brain plotting makes no sense. He doesn't care that she's loyal to Chris, he just lets her go. The whole plot point and dynamic between Rick Sr. and Amelia was wasted potential. At his son's funeral, he told her that he will take care of her and that she will always be family, but then he just does nothing with it.
Brother, what's that?
This season has a bad habit of setting things up and then never following up on them or resolving them in the most shallow ways possible. For example, Amelia Harcourt's mental and emotional state. We start off the season with Amelia attending therapy and being diagnosed with toxic masculinity, and then breaking down about how her whole life was in training for this one purpose, field work. And the season confirms that she gets into bar fights. Now, Amelia's one hell of a capable woman. Jenniferholland has worked hard to build muscle definition for this season to show off how Amelia is able to take down groups of large men. But regardless of how capable she is, she's still a woman with a small frame, up against men thrice her size on a regular basis, lunging from one fight into the next without having had recovered from her previous fight's injuries. This is seriously dangerous, but the show portrays it aesthetically. The cool aesthetic of a woman who fights to feel something, without ever actually delving into the consequences of what she's doing. She's lucky those men threw her out of the bar in episode 1, a stark contrast to her bar fight in season 1, episode 1. Realistically, these men would have done a lot worse to her. Possible consequences for these fights for her would be killing somebody or multiple people and getting in trouble with the authorities, getting herself severely injured, worse than her season 1 episode 8 injuries. Getting stalked and harassed by these men and or their women. Being kidnapped, being essayed, being forced into underground cage fights, and more. But none of those realistic consequences of what she's doing are ever explored, and the team doesn't seem that concerned for hers or their safety. Because once again, it's too mature and complex for Gunn to explore in meaningful ways. It's just dropped after her final fight in a dark alleyway in episode 4 and done. Never resolved, nothing. A character like Emilia is allowed to flail and become an emotional mess, but it has to have an in-universe explanation because since when is she masochistic like this? She was pretty collected in season 1, so something must have happened in the 3 years between season 1 and 2. Is it the blacklisting? Any DCU comic nerd would know that being blacklisted in the DCU is basically a free rite of passage to joining the roster of the most interesting operatives in the franchise. While yes, Emilia does join Checkmate at the end of the show, it's not before she sulks like a damsel in distress for 3 years over being blacklisted when she had tons of options. Number 1, a woman of her caliber would have most certainly had connections and backup plans in case Waller screws her over. 2, PMCs. 3, freelance work. 4, and so on and so forth. Season 1 set her up as the leader of the team, but doesn't actually do anything with it to lead the team into a better life where they can be heroes on their own terms post-season 1. She only acts as a leader when her beloved Chris moves into the multiverse. You'd think she'd want to honor Rick Jr.'s memory as a leader herself, but considering the fact that she shot a security guard begging for his life coldly with zero consequences or remorse in season 1 episode 3, maybe it's better that she didn't. Seriously, what the hell was that? This is the same woman who in season 1 episode 1 calls out Chris for killing Rick needlessly. And who calls out Waller for sacrificing troops. Which sets her up as the anti-Waller woman who's trying to uphold ethics on the field. But then she's anyways turned into a hypocrite with no connective tissue as to why she's that way.
No one ever told you to kill Flag. Funny for you how often the only choice in killing people coincides.
You don't know her like I do. I saw Waller knowingly sacrifice troops, including a colonel in the United States Army, to meet her objective.
Why don't we just take out the bodyguards and storm inside?
The bodyguards are probably just innocents hired to protect them. Damn, I'm living a dream. Had to assassinate a couple of children.
One of what?
What are you doing? Take care of it.
Take care of what? I'm not one of anything. I'm former Secret Service.
I don't think he's one of them. It doesn't matter. He's seen us. And Peacemaker needs our help.
Listen,
now.
I haven't seen anything, okay? My wife's name is Mary Ann.
Why are you prolonging this?
Married 16 years.
People aren't depending on us.
Mason,
we don't have
Declan, and Jaden. I love them more than anything in the world. Don't do this.
Under both domestic and international law, killing a surrendered person is an execution. Being caught is not a lawful justification. Her responsibility is to disarm and restrain, and then contact Clemson Mern for protocol on what to do with him, sparing his life.
Hey, no!
No! So you're okay with making that poor bastard's last minute of life the worst suffering imaginable because you're too much of a coward to put him out of his misery, but you won't eat a fucking fish. Got it.
I do eat fish. Pescatarians, we don't eat pork.
I don't give a shit, Adebayo. The truth is, you want to do this job, you can't balk, ever. You have to make the hard choice when necessary.
And this time you didn't balk, huh? The first time I killed someone, I didn't have my period for 3 months.
And then it gets easier?
No, not really. But it's good, it hurts. Otherwise you become like Amanda Waller and you start treating human life like it's nothing.
People people aren't depending on us. We're in the
middle of an argument.
Well, I'm not the one who just betrayed one of our own.
Oh, okay, so it's okay to shoot an innocent man begging for his life, but this you have an issue with?
He is a fellow soldier.
Pretty random rule, that the only lives that matter are the lives of the ones who fight beside us?
Yes!
Instead of her killing the security guard being tensioned with Chris himself, who was going through an identity crisis at the time, it was with Leota. He instead panics after the cops get killed in front of him and Vigilante, because if he were to have actual real tension and conflict with Amelia that actually matters, then their romantic tension wouldn't happen. And James needs his wife's character to still be sexy and desirable. And the tension between her and Leota is anyways empty too. Leota doesn't grow or get challenged, and neither does Amelia. And Leota just ends up besting her anyways in the end, praising her loyalty.
Wow, that is an incredibly clever way of shutting yourself off from the rest of the world's problems.
So why does she shut herself off like that from the rest of the world's problems, when her responsibility as a field agent is to care for the world's problems?
My record is exemplary.
Why the fuck you lying?
Served my country. I did everything that it asked of me.
But why do you actually serve your country? What are your beliefs, opinions? Do you actually care for innocent lives? She claims that the only lives that matter are of those whom fight beside you, but that doesn't make any sense either. Loyalty within the team matters, yes, but it's supposed to complement the larger responsibility of field work, protecting innocent lives, upholding ethical principles, and managing threats. Loyalty isn't meant to override that responsibility. Again, it makes you question why she even is a field agent. She doesn't enjoy killing or fighting, so it's not for the thrill. She doesn't have a clear belief system, she just doesn't have anything. And why is she so rude to everyone and insufferable? And worst is, she just gets rewarded with leadership, with no growth or accountability. Makes you question what her narrative role even is. She's not the ethical anti-Waller lady. She's not the cold-blooded agent. She's not hypocritical, just inconsistent. She's just a whole mess, and I find so much potential in her character and actress that it's a shame. Beautiful and tortured soul, my Slavic butt. If we were to truly believe, like the script desperately wants us to believe, that Rick Flag Jr. is still the noble soldier that had genuine feelings for Harcourt, I wonder how the real Rick Flag would ever fall for somebody like her, despite her rude behavior and her apparent cold nature on the field. And if she's really this cold-blooded killer, then how would she tolerate Rick being all noble? This is just a natural consequence when you don't think things through when you're writing your story.
Kratos, about this boat captain. If you needed his key to save others, why does it seem to bother you so? Your actions in this case seem justified.
I saw the terror in his eyes as he fought to hold on, and then relief when he believed I would save him. Instead, I took the key and dropped him to his death. And it was all for nothing. It would have cost me nothing to show him mercy. His life was in my hands. To be so casually cruel.
Do we really have to kill these people?
No, we'll tie them up, and by the time the morning staff comes in, we'll be long gone.
This scene doesn't count because it's in a veterinary station, so Amelia has time to make a choice, whereas on the field it was a quick decision. If Gunn wanted to show her growth, it should have been on the field. The fact that she even has to consider whether to let them live or die is very telling of her morals. She doesn't spare them because it's the right thing to do, but because of social pressure and team morale. Also, it's Vigilante holding them at gunpoint, and narratively Harcourt's meant to be more reasonable than him, so of course she won't allow him to kill them. And Gunn would then lose Vigilante's quirky murder gremlin status if he let him do something completely abhorrent. Instead of either committing to what he wrote or just making him less extreme like his alternate universe counterpart who doesn't kill people for dumb, unreasonable things like graffiti or for being caught, and actually giving him a meaningful arc.
Jesus, Mom, what part of you're not allowed to follow don't you understand?
Oh, yeah.
Also, sometimes I have to say stuff to hide that I'm out doing superhero stuff.
Yeah, like I'm slutty.
Well, yeah, I have to base it in some truths.
I seem to have found a little bitch.
I like to think that the reason why she and Rick Jr. had an affair is because Gunn needed her to be affected by Rick Jr.'s death enough to prevent her from being with Chris without having her and Rick Jr. in a full-fledged relationship, so he can still have the space to write romantic tension. He basically wanted the drama of an affair but the tragedy of lost love, without committing to one or the other.
You're the only friend I have, Rick. And I'm pretty sure I'm yours. You wasn't my boyfriend.
They were really just friends. It's just a way for the director to deflect from what he actually wrote. A cheating, womanizing Rick Flag Jr. and a doormat Harcourt. So, on to Peacemaker himself. His arc was done dirty, starting from the Suicide Squad and ending with Season 2. As I have stated already, the whole conflict between Peacemaker and Rick Flag Jr. was poorly written, making both characters utterly dumb, especially the fact that we don't have actual in-movie evidence of the statement Gunn made about how Project Starfish would essentially cause World War III, which makes this all the more baffling and confusing. And I just don't see the point of Rick Jr. dying yet, considering his story was hella unfinished, other than giving Cena the sole spotlight. After sustaining the trauma of killing Rick, Cleo runs off with the drive with Chris right behind of her, ready to shoot her even if tearfully and heartbreakingly so. Which doesn't make sense. He gave Rick 5 minutes ago the chance to surrender, begging him to surrender in fact, so he wouldn't have to shoot him. He now carries the trauma and guilt of killing him, but here Cleo, arguably a lesser threat, is surrendering, yet he's not putting the gun down. It's not psychologically consistent. It was just a way for the script to lazily and quickly resolve the tension between him and Bloodsport that ended like 40 minutes ago already, which wasn't even an interesting conflict because it's not like how it was in the comics where their conflict was about ideology. Here it was just about a shooting contest. And it was just a way for Bloodsport to have his heroic save moment, even though he saves Cleo again 5 minutes later anyways. Of course, Peacemaker nearly shooting Ratcatcher 2 is never brought up again. Then, Season 1 of Peacemaker. Surprise, surprise, he's not at all the extremist he made himself out to be.
I cherish peace with all my heart. I don't care how many men, women, and children I need to kill to get it.
Chris confirms that this line is just something he says but doesn't actually mean it.
I thought you loved peace with all your heart, no matter how many men, women, and children you needed to kill to get it.
Yes, I said that. I say that, and I mean it. It's like that's the vow I took, but... Kids? Does it just trust us and shoot kids?
He's not racist like his father, he's not unhinged like Vigilante, and he's not the extremist he claimed to be. So it really begs the question as to what exactly he needed to redeem himself from in the first place, and what he did as Peacemaker all of these years that would require him to face killing Rick Jr. and potentially Cleo Caso as well. Throughout the season, Chris cries how he doesn't wish to kill people anymore, but he's fine killing aliens, and of course his enemies conveniently end up being aliens. So instead of exploring the moral grays of heroism, he's just given the kinds of enemies he's okay killing, leading to Chris's final decision. literally genociding an entire alien species. Which wasn't even earned, as this conflict felt like some last-minute dollar store version of Omni-Man vs. Mark in Invincible's Season 1 Episode 8, with none of the emotion, history, or depth that made that conflict so utterly gut-wrenching. There's no actual commentary on the concept of peace, no actual challenge for Chris in any way, shape, or form that actually matters. I expected at the very least for her court to hold Chris accountable for killing Rick, but of course she doesn't. Killing the security guard should have been the moment that makes Chris panic, not this moment.
Oh, fuck. What the fuck are we caught up in, man? That guy just executed those dudes.
I know, how fucking cool was that?
Wasn't cool at all.
Well, that's a little judgmental.
One was fucking unconscious, man.
Dude, we're saving.
He should have been the one to see Emilia's ugly side if Gunn wanted to commit to what he wrote. Which in that case, Emilia wouldn't be the sexy cool chick with a gun that Chris lusts after and suddenly falls in love with for no reason. She'd instead represent the needless cruelty he's trying to not fall into. And any romance would require long growth arcs from both characters. A romance built on something real, not on shortcuts. Instead, the only character to actually challenge Chris is Leota, aka his kindergarten teacher, who gives him lessons on how to behave like an adult. Most of Chris's arc in Season 1 feels reduced to some cheap man-child unlearning how to be one arc. I understand that the point is that he treats others like trash to push them away, but he's not even funny at least. He's just insufferable, childish, and hella pornographic. Makes you wonder how he has survived all these years, considering he's done Black Ops and worked with many dangerous people without somebody... It's not even like Rexplode, who was a young teenager growing into responsibility and adulthood, which made him so lovable in the end. Chris is a 40-year-old man, but James Gunn characters often suffer with a syndrome called I am 40 but mentally 12-itis. Season 1 Episode 4 is a prime example of this. I wanted to rip my hair out after suffering through 5 separate dumb arguments within the first 25 minutes of the episode. In the episode before, Chris pretends to not care for Vigilante to trick Goff, who was trying to use empathy against him, but then doesn't take any accountability for Vigilante's pain, and their argument in the car was infuriating and went nowhere. Generally, their friendship went nowhere. Instead, Chris finds a new best friend in Leota. What a mess. Going into Season 2, things just don't get any better. Chris has become a much more grounded guy who wishes to be a real hero. It's nice, but he's also kind of boring. You'd expect him to be this loud, big-hearted himbo. They, however, wrote him as a depressed sad boy that keeps probing Emilia needlessly and annoyingly about their kiss like it's Camp Rock. Any opportunity to show his growth as Peacemaker was absolutely shredded. From the Justice Gang to the Kaiju fight, from the park scene to the Freedom Fighter terrorists, because yes, freedom fighters can be terrorists. The worst part is the multiverse that recycles his trauma instead of building on it. Oh, you know damned well the story dropped the ball when instead of Chris having the hallucinations of his father Season 1 set up, he instead gets a good version of his father in Season 2 because Robert Patrick is likable, I guess. And he gets Keith too. I rolled my eyes so far back I saw the cosmos when August was killed and then Keith nearly killed in front of Chris. It was the cheapest shortcut to reopening up old wounds in a character you could ever write, which is quite embarrassing for a director with
billions and 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 billions
of dollars at his disposal. The soft court thing was also rape. When the hell did she even leave Rick and where'd he go? Not that he was useful anyways. We didn't even get to see Rick Sr. or Harcourt meeting alternate Rick Jr. He just vanished. And I find that the way the alternate Peacemaker dies so unceremoniously without exploring who he truly was, and how our Chris bounces off of him, such a missed opportunity. The way he and Adrian then disposed of the body was honestly ridiculous. Not only because I, as a true crime person, can tell you that dismembering a body takes days, and they could have just thrown the body into another multiverse or back to his own and made it look like an accident.
This is a work of art. This is bullshit. This is a work of art. This is bullshit. This is a work of art. But this is bullshit.
I know some of you might be waiting for me to address the episode 1 orgy, and besides that scene being absolutely vile and disgusting, it completely undermines Chris's love for and commitment to Emilia. Writers just don't seem to understand that people who use sex as a coping mechanism can't just let go of this unhealthy behavior by falling in love with somebody, because the behavior itself represents severe commitment issues and a lack of emotional regulation. It's ironic how they only portray Emilia's bar fights as making her too broken for a relationship, but Chris throwing himself into hookups doesn't make him too unstable for a relationship. Make it make sense. And again, why stoop Rick Jr. to that low level by turning him into a womanizing cheater who uses sex too to cope then? But what makes season 2 particularly frustrating is that even when Chris tries, life screws him up over and over again to the point where the season caps off with him being tortured by Rick Sr. The worst ending to a season I've ever seen. Season 2 didn't even at the very least try to question what Peacemaker even stands for. It didn't talk about peace and his new worldview. Nothing. It was an empty, shallow, meaningless season that didn't even bother to explore the name of the titular protagonist.
Chris, listen to me. Every time someone around you dies, it's because you're not listening to yourself. Your father told you to fight your brother. You did. Waller told you to kill Rick, and you did it. Waller told you to kill Rick, and you did, and you...
Smith killed your son because Waller ordered him to. Waller ordered him.
No one ever told you to kill Flag. Funny for you how often the only choice in killing people coincides. No one ever told you to kill Flag. Funny for you how often the only choice.
You can't fuck, ever. You have to make the hard choice when necessary.
So, what is it, script? Did he kill Flag because Waller ordered him to, or because of his own extremist beliefs? Which I thought that the latter was actually the whole point of his character. But I guess they needed to make him a little bit more tragic for the second season, you know. A retcon here and there never hurts the story, right? Though as we discussed at the beginning of this video, Chris killed Rick and Rick died because they were both written to be dumb.
Your father told you to fight your brother. You did.
Now hold on a minute.
Hold up, Sheba.
What we're not going to do is victim blame Chris for the death of Keith. They were both minors, groomed by a disgusting white supremacist father into a battle that wasn't meant to be lethal, alright? No more victim blaming. Miss Leota, the Angel of Death arc makes no sense. They tried to build this big thematic tragedy. Chris believes he's cursed because everyone around him dies. But not a single death carries that moral lesson. Keith's death came from an abusive father. Rick's death came from both characters being dumb. Alternate Peacemaker was his own fault. Alternate August, vigilante. Alternate Keith, the team being idiots thinking killing him in front of Chris is a good idea. James Gunn didn't want to write a guilty man. a war-scarred soldier, a colonel killer with immense psychological guilt, a man struggling with the morality of peace through violence. Because if he wrote him that way, his guilt would have to be consistent. He would never be interested in Amelia because she was Rick's co-worker/friend, let alone when he finds out that they were lovers. He would never bully Economos knowing he suffers from the pain of losing Rick at the hands of Chris. After losing Keith and killing Rick, he could never have shrugged off Vigilante's pain. He could never have made it about strategy. He could never have emotionally neglected him afterward. He could never have treated it like a silly misunderstanding, and more. James Gunn wanted to write Peter Quill, and then a sad, broken boy he can torture and pretend it's meaningful. So, why did all of this happen? In my honest opinion, I think the core issue is that James Gunn struggles to write characters in a consistent and meaningful way. He's always had a bad habit of rewriting characters on a whim, depending on the emotional beats he wants to hit, while pretending that it's all been intentional from the very start. It's no secret that he leans too heavily on being meta and self-indulgent, which prevents him from balancing humor, absurdity, and spectacle with deeply complex, morally gray storytelling with actual real consequences and follow-through of the character's actions and evolution from one appearance to the next. He seems to adore the illusion and aesthetic of depth and complexity, the vibes and emotional beats, but without the commitment of exploring the reality of what he's writing, completely disregarding real stakes and the setups he's already built. He always ends up leaning too far into black comedy and cowardice when faced with the real implications of his writing. At the heart of all of this is that nothing under James Gunn is sacred. Characters don't evolve naturally. Instead, they pivot suddenly from one installment to another and from scene to scene with no narrative justification. Gunn also ignores real-world psychology when writing his characters. His own wife's character is the greatest example of this. She starts off as anti-Waller, pro-innocent civilian protection, ethical and professional, then becomes the kind of cold-blooded agent Waller would be proud of. But then, by her own words, only soldiers count, civilians are disposable, morality is arbitrary. She has a bias, not a moral code. Then in season 2, she's deep, sad, broken, misunderstood, and a beautiful, tortured soul. Chris's dream girl. With the script insisting us to forget, she remorselessly kills civilians and encourages cheating. And she's not even just emotionally avoidant, she's narratively avoidant. The script never lets us enter her world, and all she does is gaslight and avoid every conversation, concern, and every question. If she's the ethical agent, she would never enable cheating. If she's the cold-blooded agent, wouldn't cheat either because she values discipline. Rick's canonical personality before Gunn rewrote him as a cheating womanizer was loyal, responsible, self-sacrificial, deeply principled, and a soldier with ethics. So if Amelia really does think that only soldiers count, despises bleeding hearts, and sees civilians as disposable, why would Rick and Amelia ever work out as even teammates, let alone as a couple? Who do you think the canonical Rick Flag Jr. would side with in this conversation? If she's a beautiful, tortured soul, she wouldn't be emotionally unreachable except when cheating, and she wouldn't shoot innocents remorselessly or trash others. Ironically and unsurprisingly, back in 2022, a majority of people weren't sold by the peace courtship. He was obnoxious, disrespectful, juvenile, and downright horrendous. She was cruel, morally compromised, and insufferable. Going into season 2, while Chris's evolution feels natural and in character, Emilia in both the flashbacks and in the present has been written just similarly enough to her season 1 self, but mostly has been rewritten into a completely new character to make her deep and sad, without doing any of the work to naturally evolve her from season 1. Because Gunn realized that A, people hated her for the most part, and B, he couldn't build the kind of romance he wanted. It's retroactive continuity at its finest. And it's a shame because at best, she's genuinely lovable.
Oh my god. Oh my god. My Shayla. My Shayla.
At worst, she's duplicate.
Congratulations! Oh my god.
He says he writes for entertainment and not for realism, but where is that entertainment? Why not, instead of cheating, write a polygynous trio with Chris, Amber, and Emilia? Why don't we have Harcourt, Huntress, and Black Canary as a sister trio? Why don't we have Peacemaker, Keith, Green Arrow, and Vigilante being the loudest himbos that give Bruce Wayne migraines? Why don't we get Bloodsport, Deadshot, and Deathstroke being mercenary dads? Where are the kaiju fights, the cool weapons, outfits? Where are the original soundtracks instead of just slapping on Gunn's Spotify playlist? And if Gunn wants to claim he writes for entertainment, then stop begging the audience to cry and see the symbolism and depth. Gunn doesn't just break realism, he breaks internal consistency. When your story's inner logic crumbles, you lose the ability to invest in its stakes. When a US colonel can cheat on the host of an ancient magical entity with psychic powers with no consequences, when his father, a US military officer, can have loud intimacy with a foreign princess he's been deployed to protect in her own castle with no international or in-palace scandal, with neither flag getting Waller's wrath for their breaches of protocol, when a woman can fall in love with the man who killed her lover, when a man can stay in love and pursue a relationship with a woman whose lover's death at his own hands haunts him, when Waller can just assemble a team the equivalent of a Discord server to save the world, when a vengeful, corrupt director can just forgive his son's mistress he tried grooming for betraying his son and can let her walk off with the man who killed his son, and more, then what actually matters? What is there to actually care about? If rules don't matter, then there are no consequences. If there are no consequences, then the character's choices don't matter. And if the character's choices don't matter, then there's no story to tell.
Such wasted potential.
A colonel in a Black Ops chain of command? Especially in Argus, a metahuman national security agency, he's basically the Pentagon's walking liability form. And he's cheating on the host of a volatile ancient magical entity who can literally sense lies and betrayal. The Pentagon would go, "Oh, so not only are you reckless, you're reckless in a way that starts apocalypses?" Infidelity screams, compromised judgment, emotional instability, manipulable by enemies, risk of secrets leaking, risk of foreign entanglement, potential blackmail magnet. Cheating on the Enchantress screams career ending, clearance ending, reputation ending, classified security nightmare ending. And grooming his coworker? Oh no. This is the kind of stuff that makes the Department of Defense lose their bowels. Because now it turns into workplace exploitation, fraternization, sex-based coercion, abuse of authority, power imbalance, manipulation within a sensitive unit. Consequences? Fired, blacklisted, possibly prosecuted, publicly humiliated, and most embarrassingly, used as an example in every anti-fraternization slideshow for the next 20 years. Bro wouldn't keep his badge, rank, clearance, or freedom. Harcourt would get shredded too, obviously. As for his daddy, girl, what these two had, Alexei wouldn't just stand there with a thumb up his booty. He'd barge in, arrest Rick Sr. on spot, and call national security and Amanda Waller herself. The entire operation and trust in Argus would dissolve faster than butter in a frying pan. It would lead to a full DOD inquiry, a State Department meltdown, a CIA compliance investigation, a diplomatic crisis between the US and Pakistan, and the UN getting involved because it's sexual misconduct between foreign officials. Even Alana, for all her royal power, wouldn't get away with this. A real Peacemaker arc wouldn't be about a last-minute alien genocide to prevent his friends from being hurt. An arc worthy of the DCU would explore the truth that peace is never simple, never clean, and never achieved through a single ideology, especially not through a radical one. It's a responsibility and burden you carry. It's the weight of every life you spare and take. How violence can prevent catastrophe, but only when it's paired with accountability, empathy, and restraint.
I don't think I really care about the dumb piece. I just think I said that because I don't want to kill people anymore. Aww.
He'd learn how diplomacy is a strategy and what it truly means to build a world where people can actually live without fear or pain.
Boss, you were right. It's not about changing the world. It's about doing our best to leave the world the way it is. It's about respecting the will of others and believing in your own. Isn't that what you fought for?
There's only room for one boss and one snake.
Boss, you only need one snake. No. The world would be better off without snakes.
He writhed and changed. For 6 months, I tried to forget what I'd done to the Empress and her little girl. But there was no forgetting. I've learned that our choices always matter. To someone. Somewhere. And sooner or later, in ways we can't always fathom, the consequences come back to us. I murdered an Empress, but saved her daughter, who will one day rule the Empire. Those were my choices. I'm ready for what comes.
Killed Rick Flag. Flag was right. Peacemaker. What a joke.
Rick Jr.'s death is simultaneously treated like the center of the universe and like it doesn't matter at all. The show cannot stop showing us Rick's death with 6 separate flashbacks. But despite them all, none of the actual characters' relationships change in believable ways. Harcourt loved Rick, but still falls in love with Chris and forgives him without confrontation. Economus buddies up with Chris despite him having killed his friend, again, without confrontation. Rick Sr.'s entire motivation in Season 2 is related to his son's death. He's angry enough to commit multiverse war, but not enough to call out the woman who loved his son and claims his son adored her too, being in love with the man who killed said son. And Chris's reaction to Harcourt being with Rick is completely nonchalant. Because James Gunn is doing something rare. He wants the story to hinge on Rick Jr.'s death without allowing the characters to hinge on his death in any meaningful way. And let's accept that it is possible for a woman to fall in love with the man who killed her lover, her only friend. Do you know what that actually entails? It means that Amelia's love for Chris is not pure. It's pure projection and trauma bonding. She projects parts of Rick onto Chris. She mistakes grief comfort for attraction. She would cling because losing Chris equals to losing Rick all over again. But the show doesn't portray it that way. Same with Chris. Realistically, the reason why he's so obsessed with her isn't because he's in love, but because he's projecting his guilt onto her and wishes to fix what he broke by taking on the woman of the man he killed. Again, the show doesn't portray it that way. As it stands, the finale in particular was the final nail in the coffin for many fans. As the finale's biggest cameo didn't exist, much of the episode portrayed Chris's and Amelia's date and boat incident. The episode was titled after a wrestling move, the Final Nelson, but neither had Chris even there for most of the episode, nor had a final battle. The episode also shoehorned in a happy ending with the team opening up Checkmate with Vigilante's due ex machina money, celebrating to it like it's some cringe YouTube We Did It celebration from Mr. Beast. It was like the equivalent of those cringe wedding videos. The season ended on a cliffhanger, with Rick Sr. taking on Waller's story from Salvation but worse, and torturing Chris while cool music plays as if it's funny.
Well, that was idiotic. Off to hang myself, hot and left.
I remember posting a critique on the affair and my at the time story suggestions on Reddit sometime around episode 4's release, only to be told that I'm overthinking it, that I need to chill, and that I'm crazy. But after the finale disappointed pretty much everybody, let me ask you something. Who's crazy? Just wondering, who's crazy now?
I'm not crazy!
Just because you're right doesn't mean you're not crazy.
The Suicide Squad and Creature Commandos are the same story. Both follow a team assembled by Amanda Waller, led by Rick Flag, into a foreign deployment. Both teams have similar members. The tough, violent, traumatized one, who develops a soft spot for the softie of the team, whose father, whose legacy they carry, passed away tragically. In both stories, the Rick Flag disobeys orders, and they get fridged so that the tough, violent, traumatized one can become the real hero of the team. The differences are minor. In the Suicide Squad, the softie saves the day. In Creature Commandos, the softie dies. And in the Suicide Squad, Rick Flag dies. In the Creature Commandos, Rick Flag doesn't die. The only improvement to the story felt like it was born from the desire to correct mistakes made in the Suicide Squad, where the catastrophic consequences of exposing Project Starfish are not explicitly shown, whereas the catastrophic consequences of Ilana surviving are explicitly shown. Also, I do have a few questions. Why are Johnny Economos's and Amanda Waller's personalities so different? I still wonder though, where is Amelia Harcourt? Was she blacklisted during this time? Because I do think that she was blacklisted pretty shortly after the events of Season 1. I wish to close off this video with a positive. I'm going to be suggesting how this story could have been handled better without changing much of Gunn's current setup. First, Rick Jr. and Amelia should have been battle buddies and close friends. After his death, Waller has it out for her, forcing her into leadership and more dangerous missions, which makes her grief more unbearable as she truly realizes how much Rick Jr.'s leadership truly meant to everybody, and how upholding his values is difficult. She holds Chris accountable for what he did, watching him like a hawk for any signs of betrayal. Her morals are steady and honorable. But the fear of Waller eventually makes her to shoot an innocent to save the mission, a choice that ends up haunting her and makes her even more conflicted towards what Chris did to her friend. Eventually, she comes to forgive him and befriend him, but not after a long time. Going into season 2 of Peacemaker, Chris has been forced to stay working for Argus as Waller had found a loophole despite Leota outing her. Peacemaker's technically a superhero, not a supervillain, and he has saved the world, giving us actual conflict between Chris and Waller post-Suicide Squad. For Harcourt, she can still be blacklisted, becoming a mercenary or something. She and Chris can even do some missions together, with both having met interesting characters like Deathstroke, Bronze Tiger, and others. Both also being supportive of Rick Flag Sr., who's made a deal with the Enchantress. She'll resurrect his son with the help of her ancient connections if Senior can prove he's trustworthy. The Enchantress could have even tried getting revenge on Chris for what he did, taking away her host's protector, but was stopped because Senior does own an artifact that keeps her powers at bay, forcing her to work with humans, which infuriates her. Rick Sr. is introduced as a gruff military man with a strong old-school code. He doesn't chase after Chris to kill or torture him, but he holds him strictly accountable in that weathered, grim general style. Months into his tenure as Argus director, his son's finally resurrected and reunited with his girlfriend June Moon, who's deeply missed him. Junior would struggle with being alive again, adjusting to a world that's long moved on without him, especially as a colonel. Rediscovering the things he loved and the new releases. Harcourt would be struggling with her mental health. The last 3 years of trauma and pressure has made her turn towards bar fights and other unhealthy coping mechanisms. But with Rick Jr. alive now, she could develop feelings for Chris finally, who has long moved on from desiring Amelia and has dated other women. Whether they end up together or Chris finds love in somebody else or whatever, Chris can either way become the peacemaker to her heart and aid her in getting out of her slump. Peacemaker both means somebody who negotiates for peace and a weapon name. That dichotomy would be deeply explored, the conflict between weapon and diplomat, between superhero and soldier, how violence and the worst of humanity teaches you why peace is necessary. Instead of his whole character being an irony of being named Peacemaker but being heavily violent. The word pacemaker is also similar, so do with that what you will and how that can be used in the way he learns to be there for others. He finds a father and brother figure in Senior and Junior now that he's long lost August and Keith. And if you really wanted Keith back, you could make it so that he survived all those years ago but lost his memories. After serving for years in the military, he's become Captain Triumph and meets Peacemaker and Vigilante. Speaking of Vigilante, actually give him an arc, make him less of an extremist. Build upon the way he worships Peacemaker and how Chris has over time finally allowed himself to become closer to him. Checkmate can still be introduced with Sasha Bordeaux and a few others like the Black King, even the White Queen, Amanda Waller herself, who could even attempt assassinating Sasha, perhaps even ending up successful, to climb up Checkmate and regain her power. However, she wouldn't be the main villain of the story alongside Enchantress, but I haven't really decided on who could be the main villain, and here are just some flaw ideas for the characters. Pause to read. I couldn't care less if this is controversial or not, but drop the multiverse. I know that the DCU has always had multiverses, but they've become so incessant and distracting. Combined with the fact that there's a serious multiverse fatigue going on in media, it makes it all even more stale. Bar a couple of rare exceptions, if you feel the need to introduce the multiverse in your story, then you most likely don't even have a good story to tell in the first place. Superhero stories are meant to inspire, but how can they inspire as soon as you constantly introduce thousands of different variations of the same character? I think we'd all rather have our characters deal with their issues within their established universe. I did not make this video because I hate Peacemaker. In fact, I love it. I saw the potential it had. The story suggestions I've outlined aren't even what happens in my fanfiction, because my stories take a completely different path, even if some of it is inspired by James Gunn. But I wanted to show what could have been done with the current setup, just how much beauty and depth was already there. I want the humor and absurdity to stay. What I am asking for is character consistency, strong world building, meaningful consequences, and story integrity. James Gunn likes to give the illusion of strong, meaningful, symbolic, emotional storytelling, but he often doesn't do the work necessary to earn it. He staples on meaning, rushes arcs, and ignores real implications, both psychological and legal. He has mastered the art of emotional manipulation and gaslighting. That boat scene with Nelson's "To Get Back to You" made me cry. The music and the lighting hit me like one of those early 2000s movies where the protagonists finally kiss and the credits roll. And yet that romance remains one of the weakest on TV. Do not be manipulated. Think critically. Storytelling is a math. One wrong calculation and the entire equation falls apart. Do not let aesthetics and nostalgia blind you to the truth. Do not let storytellers, especially those who lead big franchises, ever off the hook. Do not lower your standards. Otherwise, we'll be forever stuck consuming the bare minimum while clapping like seals. Bye.
Adios, amigos.